The crying woman in the elevator. It was a crisp winter evening when Jessica got stuck working late at the office. The quiet hum of the fluorescent lights in the empty building made the place feel even lonelier. She had planned to leave hours ago, but a last-minute project had kept her tied to her desk. She sighed, glancing at the clock. It was already well past 10 p.m. After finishing the last of her work, Jessica packed up her things and made her way to the elevator. The building's high-rise had always given her a slight unease, especially at night, when the dim lighting cast eerie shadows in the hallways. The elevator was an old, clunky one with metal doors that always creaked when they opened. As she entered, Jessica pressed the button for the ground floor and leaned back against the cool, steel wall, trying to shake off the creeping feeling that something wasn't quite right. The elevator slowly descended, and for a moment, Jessica thought she heard a faint sobbing sound coming from the corner. She furrowed her brow, glancing around the small, enclosed space. The sound was soft, almost inaudible over the groaning hum of the elevator, but it was there. A quiet, broken sob. "Hello?" Jessica called out, her voice echoing in the metallic space. "Is someone there?" No reply. The elevator jolted slightly, and Jessica looked at the control panel, wondering if the elevator had somehow malfunctioned. The sobbing grew louder now, an unmistakable sound of someone crying, and Jessica felt a chill crawl down her spine. She turned to face the corner, where the sound seemed to be coming from, and froze. In the reflection of the elevator's mirrored walls, she saw her own face, but there was something else, something that shouldn't have been there. A woman, dressed in white, standing in the corner behind her, her back to Jessica. Her face was hidden in her hands, her sobs muffled by the sound of her hands covering her face. Jessica's heart skipped a beat. She quickly turned around, but the corner was empty. No one was there. She glanced nervously at the reflection again, but now the woman was gone, as if she had never been there at all. "Maybe I'm just imagining things," she told herself, shaking her head. But the sobbing continued, louder now, more desperate. Her skin prickled with fear, and she pressed the button for the ground floor again, her hands trembling. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The elevator jerked again, and then it stopped. The sobbing stopped, too. Jessica's breath caught in her throat as the doors remained shut. She reached for her phone, ready to call for help, but before she could even unlock the screen, she heard it, a soft whisper. "Help me." It was coming from behind her, spinning around. Jessica saw the woman again, standing directly in front of her. Her face was now visible, pale and tear-streaked, her eyes hollow and empty. Her clothes were tattered and soaked, as if she had been crying for hours, or days. Her lips trembled as she repeated the words, "Help me. Please." Jessica backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you want? Who are you?" She stammered, barely able to breathe. The woman didn't respond, but her tear-filled eyes remained locked on Jessica's, filled with a deep, aching sorrow. Her hand stretched toward Jessica, a thin, bony hand, as if begging for something. Suddenly, the elevator doors opened, and the woman disappeared. There was no trace of her, no sign of her presence, nothing except the empty elevator shaft behind the doors. Shaking uncontrollably, Jessica rushed out of the elevator, her feet barely touching the floor as she sprinted down the hallway. She ran through the lobby, nearly slamming the door open to escape the building. As soon as she was outside, she breathed in the cold night air, trying to steady herself. Jessica didn't tell anyone about what happened. The elevator had returned to normal, the lights were working again, and the building was quiet. But she couldn't shake the image of that woman's hollow eyes from her mind. Weeks later, she mentioned the incident to a coworker, thinking it was just a one-off strange experience. But her coworker's face paled when she heard the story. "Did the woman? Was she wearing a white dress?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Jessica replied, confused by the reaction. "She was." Her coworker's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's the ghost of the woman who died in this building years ago. She was a secretary here. She was stuck in the elevator during a fire. They say her body was never found, and now she haunts that elevator, crying for help. People say if you hear her cry, she's asking for someone to save her." Jessica felt a shiver race down her spine. The elevator was a place of death, and now, she knew why the woman was still there. But what scared her most was the thought that the woman hadn't just been asking for help, she had been asking for a way to finally leave. That night, Jessica didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still hear the faint sobbing, lingering in her mind, as though the woman was still calling to her from the dark, empty elevator.